Microsoft Arizona 400 exam practice questions with explanations are available in the video for you to study. You use calendar versioning, Calver, for code assets. You need to store an optional tag of beta as part of the version. Which part of the version should you use for the tag? A. Minor. B. Major. C. Micro. D. Modifier. The answer is D. In calendar versioning, Calver, the version typically follows a structure like YYYY. Minor, and an optional label can be appended for clarity, such as the 1st of June 2025 beta. The modifier, or label, is the appropriate part of the version where tags like beta, alpha, or RC1, release candidate, are added. These tags do not affect the numerical ordering but provide context about the version's release stage. Thus, to store an optional tag like beta, you use the modifier part of the version. You have an Azure subscription that contains 50 virtual machines. You plan to manage the configuration of the virtual machines by using Azure Automation State Configuration. You need to create the desired state configuration, DSC, configuration-less. How should you structure the code blocks? A. Node, configuration, resource. B. Configuration, resource, node. C. Resource, configuration, node. D. Configuration, node, resource. The answer is D. In Azure Automation State Configuration using PowerShell Desired State Configuration, DSC, the standard structure for a DSC script is configuration, node, configuration. This is the top-level block where the overall DSC configuration is defined. Node. Inside the configuration, you define one or more target nodes, machines. Resource. Within each node block, you specify the DSC resources to manage configurations, like file, service, registry, etc. Your team uses Azure pipelines to deploy applications. You need to ensure that when a failure occurs during the build or release process, all the team members are notified by using Microsoft Teams. The solution must minimize development effort. What should you do? A. Install the Azure Boards app for Teams and configure a subscription to receive notifications in a channel. B. Use Azure Automation to connect to the Azure DevOps REST API and notify the team members. C. Use an Azure function to connect to the Azure DevOps REST API and notify the team members. D. Install the Azure Pipelines app for Teams and configure a subscription to receive notifications in a channel. The answer is D. The Azure Pipelines app for Microsoft Teams allows you to receive build and release notifications directly in a Teams channel with minimal development effort. You can subscribe to specific events such as build failures, release failures, or pull request updates. This is the most straightforward, no-code solution to fulfill the requirement. Other options like using Azure Automation or Azure Functions involve custom development and unnecessary complexity for a simple notification task. You have an on-premises app named App1 that accesses Azure resources by using credentials stored in a configuration file. You plan to upgrade App1 to use an Azure Service Principal. What is required for App 1 to programmatically sign in to Azure Active Directory, Azure AD? A. The application ID, a client secret, and the object ID. B. A client secret, the object ID, and the tenant ID. C. The application ID, a client secret, and the tenant ID. D. The application ID, a client secret, and the subscription ID. The answer is C. To authenticate a non-interactive application, like an on-prem app, with Azure Active Directory using a service principal, you need Application ID, also known as Client ID, identifies the app registration in Azure AD. Client secret, a password-like credential generated during app registration. Tenant ID, identifies the Azure AD directory, domain, where the app is registered. These three values allow the app to request a token from Azure AD and access Azure resources securely. Note: the object ID and subscription ID are not required for authentication. They're used for managing resources, not for signing in. You have a private distribution group that contains provisioned and unprovisioned devices. You need to distribute a new iOS application to the distribution group by using Microsoft Visual Studio App Center. What should you do? A. Register the devices on the Apple Developer Portal. B. Add the device owner to the organization in App Center. C. Create an unsigned build. D. Add the device owner to the collaborators group. The answer is A. For iOS app distribution outside of the App Store, such as via Microsoft Visual Studio App Center, Apple requires all target devices to be registered on the Apple Developer Portal. This is part of the provisioning profile used to sign the app. Unprovisioned devices will not be able to install or run the app until they are registered and included in a new provisioning profile. After registering the devices, you must generate a new provisioning profile that includes them, and then rebuild and distribute the app via App Center. Collaborator roles and unsigned builds don't solve the issue of Apple's strict provisioning requirements. Your company uses Azure Artifacts for package management. You need to configure an upstream source in Azure Artifacts for Python packages. Which repository type should you use as an upstream source? A. npmjs.org. B. Pippy. C. Maven Central. D. Third-party trusted Python. The answer is B. When working with Python packages in Azure Artifacts, the appropriate upstream source for public Python packages is Pippy, Python Package Index, the official repository for Python packages. Configuring Pippy as an upstream source allows your Azure Artifacts feed to proxy public packages from Pippy. Cache them for later use. Help you manage both internal and external dependencies in one place. You have a private distribution group that contains provisioned and unprovisioned devices. You need to distribute a new iOS application to the distribution group by using Microsoft Visual Studio App Center. What should you do? A. Select Register Devices and Sign My App. B. Create an active subscription in App Center test. C. Add the device owner to the organization in App Center. D. Create an unsigned build. The answer is A. When distributing an iOS application via Microsoft Visual Studio App Center to devices that are not yet provisioned, i.e., their UDIDs are not registered with Apple, you must use the Register Devices and Sign My App option in App Center. This allows App Center to collect UDIDs from the unprovisioned devices, automatically register them on the Apple Developer Portal, create a new provisioning profile, and sign the app so it can be installed on those devices. This is the simplest way to ensure both provisioned and unprovisioned devices in your private distribution group can install the app. Other options like unsigned builds, subscriptions, or adding users to the org do not address provisioning requirements for iOS. You have Azure Pipelines and GitHub integrated as a source code repository. The build pipeline has continuous integration enabled. You plan to trigger an automated build whenever code changes are committed to the repository. You need to ensure that the system will wait until a build completes before queuing another build. What should you implement? A. Path LTERS. B. Batch changes. C. Scheduled builds. D. Branch LTERS. The answer is B. In Azure Pipelines, when continuous integration, C, is enabled, you can configure the system to batch changes. This means if multiple commits are pushed in quick succession, the pipeline waits for the current build to complete before queuing another one. Instead of building each commit individually, it batches them together and triggers a single build with the latest changes. This helps prevent build queues from becoming overloaded and reduces unnecessary builds. Path filters control which files trigger builds. Scheduled builds run at specific times, not on commit. Branch filters control which branches trigger builds. You have a project in Azure DevOps. You plan to deploy a self-hosted agent by using an unattended configuration script. Which two values should you deny in the configuration script? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Note: each correct selection is worth 1 point. A. Authorization credentials. B. The project name. C. The deployment group name. D. The organization URL. E. The agent pool name. The answer is D. When deploying a self-hosted Azure DevOps agent using an unattended, scripted setup, the following values are essential. D. Organization URL. Specifies the Azure DevOps organization to which the agent will connect, e.g., https://dev.azure.com/yourorganization. E. Agent pool name. Identifies the agent pool the agent will join. The pool must already exist in Azure DevOps. Your company has an on-premises Bitbucket server that is used for Git-based source control. The server is protected by a firewall that blocks inbound internet traffic. You plan to use Azure DevOps to manage the build and release processes. Which two components are required to integrate Azure DevOps and Bitbucket? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Note: each correct selection is worth 1 point. A deployment group. B. A Microsoft-hosted agent. C. Service hooks. D. A self-hosted agent. E. An external Git service connection. The answer is D. To integrate Azure DevOps with an on-premises Bitbucket server, behind a firewall, you need a self-hosted agent. Because Microsoft-hosted agents cannot reach behind your firewall, you need a self-hosted agent installed inside your network to access the Bitbucket server. E. An external Git service connection. Since Bitbucket server is not a cloud-hosted service, like Bitbucket Cloud, you must configure a Git service connection to connect Azure DevOps to your external, on-prem, Git server.